are Tyrians. We are many races, several professions. We practice the arts of combat as well as healing. We have foes, and we fight them without mercy. And it's time for us to claim back what is ours. It's time for us to claim bacteria from the terror of the elder dragons. We can't go on living our lives in fear. We have to fight. We have to make a stand. This is our story.
Hello and welcome everyone to episode number 14 of the Chronicles of Tyria podcast, Guild Wars 2 podcast for fans by fans. I'm Lagwyn and I'm here with Diint.
Hello.
And our lovely Australian Skritt expert, Kaysee, is here with us as well.
Hello.
And we just like to thank everybody for coming out and listening to all of our previous episodes, except for episode 13, which at this point is still not on the internet because me and Diint don't have the time to edit it. We really respect Naveen for what she's done because, I mean, I don't know, you guys, I don't know what you'll be hearing by the time you hear that episode, but my ended recording file was 2 hours and 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. Which means we have to listen to 2 hours and 40 minutes of it attentively to then edit it to make it into a podcast that you guys will listen to. And, yes, I don't have 3 hours where I can just sit in front of a computer and listen and not be engaged in something else.
Yeah, same here. And now I think you and me are, extremely appreciative of what Naveen has been doing for us.
Yeah. I mean, as I call her a slacker to her face and on the podcast and behind her back, she's not really. She's pretty great, and we will be. Well, we love having Kaysee here to do all these podcasts with us. When we have Naveen back, it'll be great because then the podcast will actually be out. But next week it's gonna be like podcast Christmas for you guys because it's gonna be like 1, 2, 3 in a row. You get these ones from this week, then you'll get Monday's episode and probably the thank you episode at some point next week and Thursday's episode.
Yeah.
So, podcast.
It's going to be like Christmas or you're going to get sick of it real fast. It's one of the two.
Yeah. We'll call it Podcast-a-Palooza.
Oh, wow. I can't try and say that.
Well, there you go. I don't know.
That's poignant. That was real poignant.
Exactly. But if you do want to check out any of these podcasts or Podcast-a-Palooza next week, CoTPodcast.com or CoTPodcast on YouTube. So what we're going to do today is, we mentioned it in the last episode, but who knows, maybe through the power of editing, we'll switch this piece and make it be on that episode. I don't know. But we said we were going to interview Kaysee so you can actually know who she is, rather than just this random person who we dubbed the Wonder from Down Under who's just talking on stuff out of nowhere. So we'll actually dive into her as a person and her relation to Guild Wars and whatever else. And that's how we're going to start it off. And then we're going to move on to the lore. And today we're going to be talking about the Skritt, the Quaggan, and the Hylek. And we figured we'd do 3 because there's not a ton of information on all these different races. So we can
we thought there wasn't. And then we saw...
Well, yeah, Kaysee did a number on making us look horrible again in our preparation. We will link in the description her notes. I'll put them on a public Google Doc or something, so you can see how ridiculous and awesome they are. Before we get into the interview, we'd just like to point out that today was a stress test. And tomorrow is also a stress test. Tomorrow being Friday, which again, by the time you hear this will be completely irrelevant. But there you go. I know we all got to play in it, some less than others due to alarm clock mishaps.
Yes, that was me.
But,
2 a.m. is hard time to get up
yeah.
at.
So we did. I don't know. Did you guys notice? I think we kind of talked about this, but there wasn't any major differences that we saw, like as in new content, things like that.
No, I did notice one specific add-on that it wasn't necessarily major, but it was definitely appreciative, specifically from my sanity. The jumping puzzle that is in the starting area for the Sylvari, there is one specific rock that goes to another rock that in all of the betas before, and by betas I mean the one beta that had Sylvari and the other stress test that had Sylvari, but that I can never make the jump on, and I would and it's always like near the end of it, and you fall and you die no matter what, and it was just awful. But they actually added a branch that you could walk across it. And I just want to personally thank ArenaNet for that, because I no longer have to go to therapy now. So
yeah. It was a little bit more laggy than the previous stress test, so I guess they're still doing work.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I don't think I noticed much in the way of anything kind of different. I didn't do too much. Oh, they added a vista in Lion's Arch, but it wasn't anything different than the vista we mentioned last time with the Sharkmaw Caverns. Just a new vista. It wasn't even a jumping puzzle. You could just walk right to it up some flights of stairs, but nothing too important. Just give you a view of like that whole kind of mini pet arena area. That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, other than that, I don't think I noticed much else in the way of any major tweaks. Oh, I did notice the bank. At least wherever we were in World vs. World, there was no bank in your home, like your little home camp there. So we don't know if they removed the bank entirely from that, or what the deal is with it, but yeah, Kaysee, you didn't. I mean, I know you only had an hour to play. Did you find anything interesting?
No, I wouldn't know because I went to some new areas.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully, again, not that it matters by the time you guys hear this, but the characters for tomorrow's stress test will not be wiped, so we'll be playing the same characters as we have been previously, which is cool. And I would like to point out that I don't know if I did it on the last podcast, that again, retroactive doesn't make sense, but I did call that I thought there's going to be one stress test a week up until launch, and so far there were 2 on Thursday, and now they're throwing this screwball out here with putting one on a Friday too. So, basically,
no complaints.
I'm saying that I was right. And everybody that doubted me, you can suck it, because I was right. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I did notice one thing, and you guys, I don't know if you guys spent much time in Divinity's Reach recently, and if any listeners did, they can correct me, but I noticed this area called Hadron's Menagerie. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's basically like a carnival-y kind of area where there's a bunch of exotic animals in like cages that you can go and look at.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was there previously or not, because I don't remember seeing it, but that could have been added in Beta Weekend 3, and I just wasn't in Divinity's Reach enough to know. But I thought it was cool because I saw a red wolf, which is something I'd never seen before, and there's actually a griffin in one of the cages, which was cool.
Ooh.
And then there's one cage that has a red kind of cloth over top of it, and it's chained up like crazy all over the place with chains and locks and everything.
Ooh.
So I wonder what's in there, but I couldn't get the tour guide guy there to tell me anything about it, so...
Ooh. Maybe it's part of a personal story or something.
Yeah, maybe. But, yeah. So, I think with that, we'll kind of move on to our interview with Kaysee from Chronicles of Tyria. So, to start, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I live in Australia and my hobbies are writing and languages. I've been studying Japanese for many, many years, longer than I can remember, and Chinese for 3. And I suppose if you really want to know more about me, you can go to the About authors page in Chronicles of Tyria. There's a little bit more written up there.
All right.
Okay. When did you get into gaming?
I actually got into gaming really, really young because my dad was into computers, and so I can't remember when, but it was, the first game that I remember playing was Ariel, like the Mermaid Under the Sea game. So I must have been quite young, and you had to like press different fishes that matched the right color and all that sort of motor skill learning exercises and those sort of things. So I grew up with that kind of game, and then on the other hand, I also grew up with Warzone. Have you guys ever played that?
No. It sounds familiar.
It's I really don't know much about it, but it's like you build up a base and you have little tanks and you go and kill the other base. It's that sort of strategy game.
Oh, okay.
And like it was such like I grew up playing that with my dad and then playing Ariel by myself. So like that's probably why I've grown up with such a mixed personality. That, or if you believe in star signs, I'm a Gemini. So
I don't, but that's because I'm. But that's okay. I'll take all the flack from that, and I will fight you tooth and nail that astrology is not science. But anyway, so your favorite game then, if you could put a finger on one.
Yes. That would have to be Baldur's Gate. Have you guys ever heard of that one?
Yes.
So it's kind of like a fantasy D&D game, and like I fell in love with that game pretty young, and I've just kept on playing it, and I actually would be still playing it now if my computer couldn't play it anymore. I think the operating system is too new.
Yeah.
So, but the reason I got hooked on it was because it taught me that even though it's a video game, it doesn't have to be lacking in storytelling. It had such a good story and good characters, and even though it was a video game, you can still convey those sort of things.
Yeah, and some very memorable quotes that were very cheesy, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Oh, God, what were they?
I remember when you clicked on one guy's picture, because when you clicked on them, they had things to say, and one guy was like, "Stop touching me!"
Let's see, what can I remember? I think there was butt kicking for goodness.
Oh, yes!
Oh, God, I can't remember what. There were some other good ones, too. Oh.
And that was from the guy with the little pet hamster called Boo?
Yeah,
or something like that.
Boo points, I punch. It's a very simple relationship, but it is effective.
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Oh, how nostalgic.
How did you first get involved with Guild Wars?
It was actually my dad brought it for me when it first came out in 2005 for my birthday. And it was he kind of planned for us to play it together, but I was a bit too young to play it, to get it, and I didn't quite know all the rules and how to do it very well. So in the end, I didn't play it very much, but I always had the game. And I think I also brought factions for some reason, and I had like a level 14 character on Singji Island who had done basically no missions. So I have no idea how I got it to level 14, or I can't remember playing any of her, but I obviously just, fiddled around with characters when I was younger.
Well, that actually brings up a good question, because I'm curious, because you said you were too young to play Guild Wars at 2005?
Oh, not too young, but I just wasn't into it. Like okay. I didn't know the rules of MMOs, and I didn't talk to people online, so it was hard to find parties, and it was so not young as in and probably mentally, but probably young as in I just wasn't into that at that stage.
Okay. So it's like, God, here. How old were you? Like 13? Jeez.
No, 15.
I'm 21, so...
Okay.
Yeah, just wasn't into it at that stage, I guess.
Okay. But, so, obviously we know through, what you do with your writing at Chronicles of Tyria that PvE you'll be, very active in.
Mm-hmm.
But, how about structured PvP or World versus World? Any interest in that at all?
I've never had an interest in PvP. I've just never been into it, but I think even Guild Wars, I think for Guild Wars I will get into it. This is something appealing about the PvP of Guild Wars. And the World versus World, oh, I'm going to be all over that. That seems so...
Well, I know, like we've mentioned, we're going to be in it, so...
Yeah.
Have to come fight for Chronicles of Tyria.
No, we'll be fighting each other at some point.
I know. Oh, well.
When it comes to your story, what can we expect to see coming up?
So... Geez, how much do I give away or not? I have really big plans for Azalea. I've planned quite extensively, and I've got quite a few themes and morals that I want to explore through her. And probably the most secretive thing I'm going to give out would be that we've already met quite a major player in Azalea's life, and for the rest of, not the rest, but for quite a bit of the story, that person will be very interesting, and they will be explored more. And for the next chapter, I don't know. Next chapter will probably be up in the next few days. I don't know when this podcast will go out, but you'll see the character that I imagined Azalea to be, because being in the Nightmare Court was really explaining how she became the character that I imagined up, and you'll see the effect that the Nightmare Court had on Azalea and her character, and I kind of imagined her as a very strong and stubborn, and in some ways a very merciless character. But then you also see that behind the tough girl act, and that sounds so cliche, behind the tough girl act, but you'll see that the original Azalea is still there, but she's just beneath a lot of wound and a lot of toughened skin.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. So, all right. So I think we kind of have an idea on this already, but when Guild Wars comes out, final, on launch day or head start day, favorite race and profession to play, and what's your main character going to be?
Oh, see, this one's very different, because my favorite race, from a lore perspective, is the Sylvari for sure. They have just so much some like a special magic about them. When you play it, it's just so much fun. But saying that, on release day, I would definitely be a human elementalist, because I know this is really vain, but the humans look a lot better in armor. So I'm going to be human just to have the really cool light armor.
All right.
But I plan to play as Kaysee, which is also a character that I've kind of been dreaming up, which is the human fire elementalist. Mm-hmm. So if you want to find me online, you can find me as Kaysee.
Before we bring the interview to a close, is there anything else you'd like to mention?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, let me.
Maybe I should just quickly say that. Thank you to everyone at Chronicles of Tyria who reads and supports my work, and I've had a lot of good comments from people, and to know that people are so lovely and so encouraging makes writing a lot easier every week.
All right. Well, I know we appreciate it as readers from Chronicles of Tyria. Did you want to mention anything else about the contest that you have going on?
Oh, yes. Well, hopefully this will be up before it ends. But I'm currently running a lattice configurator puzzle or contest. And basically in Brisbane Wilds, there's a little area and there's pardon me. There's a little area, and the Azura go there to study gate travel, except something's gone wrong, and the lattice configurators have become all jumbled. And so they need user input to get these right, and if you get the answers wrong, they'll spawn monsters. And unfortunately, the whole base is being overrun. So I've given the community these 10 puzzles from these lattice configurators, and if you can solve them, hopefully we can save the research base and the 0 that are there. And that should be going for about a week. So I think it will finish probably next week, Tuesday or Wednesday. Not quite sure.
All right. So, all right. Well, I guess with that, we will move on to our lore piece, and Diint's going to start us off, and he's going to talk about the Hylek.
Yes, the Hylek. The Hylek are, and we kind of saw, I guess, a brief hint of them in Guild Wars 1 with the Hecate, because they're very, very similar, but they are completely different. And I'll get to that in a little bit. The Hylek are basically a sort of humanoid frog species that are mainly interior, as in the continent. They have, but lately here they've actually been spreading quite a bit. And so they're actually found in a bunch of different coasts, like, for example, like the coast that are around the Sea of Sorrows and the Tarnished Coast and a bunch of other Crichton coasts, as well as some of the coasts to the west of the Shiver Peak Mountains. And a while ago, they used to be like extremely reclusive and xenophobic, and but now, I guess because of how widespread all of the other races are, I guess they're kind of like, monkey see, monkey do type thing. So now they're starting to spread out a little bit more as well. And so but what they're mainly doing is they're mainly trading. When it comes to the Hylek physiology, they're very wide-mouthed. They are pretty much frogs that stand on their hind legs. They have really long tongues, just like a frog. They're descendants from the Hecate species from Alona. And the Hylek, they can thrive in basically any type of water, but they prefer in like very swampy areas, very like humid and muggy type areas because of just how, I guess, that's kind of carrying over from the Hecate being from Alona. Despite the preference, however, they can actually be found far away from water, and they can actually kind of be found just kind of like in the middle of dry land. All of the Hylek have a set of poison glands that are filled with these like deadly toxins and stuff, and each of them are immune to their own, and also a bunch of other type of poisons. So they're not very good against. Let's just say if you're a necromancer and you were basically mainly in poisoning, I wouldn't go and face a Hylek because it's going to be little to no use. I don't know if that actually applies to gameplay, but lore-wise.
Right, I was going to say that would make, if Hylek ever became playable, that would be a little bit of overpowered. Actually, a lot of bit of overpowered.
Yeah. Maybe they're not immune to magical poison.
Oh, maybe. That's true.
The Hylek come in a wide variety of colors, and each of their tribes have a specific color, like a main color. And their color hints at basically their aggressiveness and their temper, and it also tends to correspond to how deadly the toxin that's in their body is. They are capable of reproducing very, very fast, like kind of like rabbits, I guess. They're born in broods as basically like helpless little tadpoles in like groups of hundreds of thousands. And the early life of a Hylek is actually a battle for survival, allowing basically only the strongest of them and the most aggressive of a Hylek actually survive, which is why they're so, I guess, Bamfy whenever they're actually full grown. The actual lifespan of a Hylek is actually pretty short. I guess if one were to die in their old age, it'd probably be around their mid-40s. But few actually make it to that age because, very similar to the Norn, they tend to just die in battle. Although Hylek also for some reason, have a history of dying of starvation for some reason. But yeah, I don't know. That's what I have here in my notes. The culture of the Hylek. This is what I find the most interesting. The culture of the Hylek, they divide themselves into different tribes. And like I mentioned earlier, that's, differentiated by color. Each tribe, again, has a different toxin strength, and the ones with the strongest toxins tend to be the most aggressive. Now, a tribe can range from a couple dozen to even hundreds of Hylek. And because they're so territorial, it's basically impossible to get multiple tribes to cooperate. And so when two tribes tend to claim the same land, they often basically wage full-out war until one tribe or both of them are dead. However, when it comes to gameplay, there are a few tribes that we actually know of, and that is the Duratl, the Jinotl, and the Quinotl. And those are some of the newer tribes, I think, and some of the older ones. Some of the older tribes actually included different ones. They included the Hylek and the Agari and the Ophil and the Gokir, which are different, I guess, sort of slight differentiated species of the Hylek. The Hylek was once the name of a single tribe among the race, but in the past 250 years, from Guild Wars 2 standpoint, it has basically expanded to refer to the race as a whole. The tribe oversees care of the new brood of youngsters, like the little tadpoles that I mentioned earlier, but with very minimal effort. Basically, because like I mentioned earlier, it's basically just kind of like a fight for survival. Like they'll sort of look over them to make sure like the whole group doesn't die out based off of like huge predators, like maybe a brood mother or something. But they basically just kind of have to tend for themselves. Now here, the Hylek actually tend to experiment a lot in alchemy because of how plentiful they are with like toxins and poisons and stuff. So that's actually what they tend to trade with a lot is different potions and antidotes and poisons and other compounds and things like that based off of their study in alchemy. So they're actually quite a intelligent race despite how brutal they can seem to be sometimes. And so basically, yeah, because of all of the alchemy that they've been practicing, it's basically allowed for the Hylek to form like a really good economy with other races and groups. Other races will sometimes actually accept Hylek as apprentice alchemists, allowing both races to kind of gain new knowledge from both of it. Like they're both learning something new. Because of how, territorial the Hylek are, it's rare for them to really let other races in for them to learn something. Even though the Asura value the Hylek for their alchemy, the Asura actually still kind of like butt heads with them just because of how completely egotistical the Asura are. So I found that interesting. I was like, yeah, we'll give you some credit, but you're still dumb, and we hate you. When it comes to the Hylek religion, they don't actually have gods, but instead they actually just worship the sun, which is very, very tribal and very, I guess, primitive, which I found really interesting considering how contrasting that is with like their extensive knowledge in alchemy. They view the sun as like an actual entity, like a deity, but they don't have a name for it. And this deity actually represents both good and evil. And to Hylek, the sun is the bringer of life, sustaining heat and bounty, but it is also the harbinger of drought and famine. And they will often hold festivals on the solstices to celebrate the waning and the waxing of the day's lengths throughout the year. Hylek priests are masters of reading the sun and the sky, sort of like how we kind of read the stars in astrology. They will do the same with the sun and the sky, to kind of like foretell weather patterns and see if there's going to be a drought coming soon, and how dry the seasons are going to be, and how plentiful their harvests are going to be, things like that. And when it comes to the Hylek, it is often considered that an accurate priest, like the most accurate the priest can be, the more important the tribe is, because of how prosperous the tribe's going to be. And just briefly on their government, they don't really have, I couldn't really find much on their government standpoint, but when it comes to their government, they don't really have organized government. I'm really redundant right now. But instead they have individual tribes, like I mentioned earlier, and each tribe is led by a single chieftain who basically has an absolute rule over the whole tribe. But sometimes the chieftain will actually like consult with priests and elders of the tribe, just to kind of like still gain favor with the tribe, but it's basically his decision, his word is the only one. And the Hylek who actually who make it through their harsh lives into actual old age of mid-40s, are actually deeply respected by the tribe and are often asked for counsel on difficult issues, even if it's not by the chieftain. Or they might even ask the elders for like judgment during disputes among the tribe. Or if there's like a criminal or something like that, they won't often just consult the chieftain. They'll also consult some of the elders because they have more experience, and there's a bigger chance of them knowing what the right thing would do.
All right, so thank you for that, Diint. And I guess we'll move on to the next piece, which I'll be taking over, which is the Quaggan. They are, I don't know, this was kind of a surprise race for me when I heard about these, because I thought it was kind of silly. I don't know what you guys feel, but
I never cared for them.
I think they were kind of like a novelty race. They're cute, but I don't really know much about them.
Oh, then buckle up, Missy, because you're going to go for a knowledge ride. But no, you're right. They are kind of cute. And just real quick, the only thing I could find on origin of where they came up with them is that their name is the Quaggan. Quaggan is kind of similar to the word quagmire, and quagmire means swamp. And they're kind of amphibious, so maybe there's a link there, but that's for a name. So, but anyway, they're short, they're round, they almost kind of look beluga whale / dolphin-y a little bit. Their hands and feet are like flipper-esque, and they have a big flat tail like a beaver has. And what I actually didn't notice this in game, but I really wasn't paying attention, was depending on where they live depicts what their skin color is like. So in the southern areas, which is where we're playing, they're kind of bluish, like almost like a dolphin colored skin, and you can see that in game. But apparently in the northern areas, they're black and white, almost like a killer whale is. So, and
that'd be cool to see.
Yeah, I think that would be cool, and I didn't even think about this till I was just linked it by Diint. But yeah, Quagsire, the Pokemon that evolves from Wooper, is also very similar to what a Quaggan looks like. So that could also be where they got some of the ideas. Good catch on that. Like I said, they are amphibious, so they can live and breathe underwater, but they can also walk around on land. In the water doesn't matter. It could be salt or fresh water. It doesn't seem to bother them too much. Apparently, if they spend too much time on land, though, like a day or so or more, their skin will start to crack, and it'll be kind of uncomfortable, so they'll probably want to go get in the water. They eat both, they're omnivores. They eat both plants and meat, and they pretty much eat anything that they could find in the water, so if that's seaweed or kelp or coral or fish or whatever they can find. And they reproduce by laying eggs, and the young are tended to by the entire Quaggan community, which is very different from what Diint was describing with the Hylek. So, Another aquatic type race that's just totally the opposite. And here's the weird kind of Quaggan thing that they have going on. They have this kind of strange Hulkness about them, if you will, where whenever they're threatened or in pain, their adrenaline kicks into like overdrive, and their skin, and I've actually seen them in game do this, and it's frightening. Their skin turns like a darkish red, and giant teeth erupt from their mouth, and their flippers grow into big like claws, and they just Hulk out. And if you actually look up the image that ArenaNet posted on this in their original blog post, the image title is Hulked Out Quaggan. So, I guess that's the best way to describe it. So, they pretty much don't have control of their mind when they do this. They're just kind of crazy, like the Hulk, I guess you could say. They're crazy, rampaging, they'll cause all sorts of problems. And it's actually like a faux pas, like a social no-no for the Quaggan to do this, so that's why they attempt to not have this happen whenever possible. So I just thought that was kind of interesting that they have this ridiculous power, and they just won't use it because it's like unheard of in their society. Let's see, what else do I have on the kind of personality? Oh, there are some Quaggan that actually can control this themselves when they go into their hulked out state. And they usually become kind of like heroes among the Quaggan because they have the ability to like fight for what's, right or what they believe in and, not risk destroying everything. But at the same time, those other Quaggan think that they're weird. They're like, you're a little strange that you can control that. So,
I think they're just jealous.
Yeah, probably.
Jelly.
Yeah. But they are so against this whole transforming into their hulked out form that they'll pretty much go along with anything to just avoid any kind of conflict that will result in them hulking out. Like, if someone's like, you gotta give me 200,000 gold or else, they'll just be like, okay. Because they don't want to get into a fight and then hulk out and be embarrassed. So, again, they're very super polite and very accommodating because they don't want to have any of this kind of stuff happen. And I'm going to talk about that. It's an interesting one that I thought when we get into the religion, about how the pretty much will, rather than cause even any kind of lighthearted debate, they'll just accept whatever anybody says because they don't want to get in trouble. They often refer to themselves, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but they refer to themselves as Quaggan. I don't know I think they get names, but they'll often call themselves like Quaggan this or Quaggan that, and they kind of talk in like almost the third person.
Yeah, I noticed that.
It's a little strange. They don't really seem to have much sense of kind of individuality. So, and I guess, I don't know if you guys thought this either, but I don't know, it kind of, when they refer like Quaggan, sad, makes me think that they're kind of like stupid.
Yep.
Or almost like tiny little kids. And that's not really the case, but they're just really
kind of
bizarre.
view them as like maybe autistic or something.
Yeah, they're not, but I guess that's just because they're weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I know that, like, this is my study of Japanese culture. The Japanese also say we Japanese. And, like, Japanese people do this kind of thing. We Japanese people do that. And I think it has something to do with the conformity. So perhaps because the Quaggan just go along with everything that anyone else says, like, they won't, because individualism isn't, they can't have it without disagreeing with someone, so they kind of all conform. So maybe it has something to do with that.
That is a very interesting theory. I like that. Let's go with that. And if not ArenaNet, just go with that, because that was pretty good. I found this. They are comfortable with themselves naked, but they often wear clothes, as that's how they express their individuality, and their pride is in the fact that they wear clothes. And however they decorate themselves, you see some of them have like weird headdress things made out of feathers and whatnot. I don't know. And they live in these kind of weird pods underwater. And you can see this in the Caledon Forest, and you can see this in Lion's Arch, is probably the easiest place to see it. But I didn't realize this till I read it, that they're held down to like the seafloor by like strands of seaweed. So
I noticed that.
If you want to just move your house, you can just cut the seaweed and push your house somewhere else.
Kind of like a trailer.
Basically, yeah. It's get yourself a double wide pod under Lion's Arch.
Don't park it on a hill.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they use.
Don't park it in current.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just float away.
Like near a waterfall or something.
Yeah, right. They use, I think that's actually one of the heart quests, is they use kind of pearls and like all sorts of weird like bioluminescent kind of creatures and fungus and jellyfish and stuff, and that's how they provide light for their family and their whole cities, which I thought was kind of cool. But yeah, so their religion, back to what I was talking about them being kind of very accommodating to what anybody will say. So they worship one deity called Malagan, and this Malagan represents the bounty of the sea. And a lot of human scholars think that Malagan is Melandru, because the Quaggans use the sunken temples of Melandru to worship Malagan. And other than, they're both kind of nature-related as well. And the Quaggans, they know that it's not Melandru. And they recognize that Melandru is a god. But they worship Malagan. But they're so worried about any kind of conflict that they're too polite to tell the humans otherwise. So they just, go along with it. Because they're like, oh, well, we don't want to cause any trouble. So, yeah, you're right. Melandru and Malagan are the same thing. Sorry. But they're like, it's not, but we don't want to start a fight. So, and I think I read somewhere that the Quaggan believed their god was killed a long time ago. So I don't know why they're worshipping their god if the god was also killed. But
maybe it's a sort of mourning process.
Yeah.
It's just taken way out of hand.
Yeah. Oh well. I guess we'll see if we encounter more Quaggan in the game. As far as history for the Quaggan goes, actually, first let me just touch on the government quick. You know what? Actually, the history will tie in more into that, so we'll start there. So we don't know much about them because they just used to live out in the ocean, and they were just out being Quaggan, eating food, living it up, and they lived in the unending ocean pretty much. But since the Krayt started invading about 50 years prior to the start of Guild Wars 2, they were forced from their homes, and then that pushed them closer towards Tyria and Kryta and where they are now. And that's actually a lot of the missions in the Caledon Forest specifically are like the Quaggan, or even in like Keswick Hills, Quaggan are being attacked by the Krayt. Mm-hmm. And I think I remember actually a Quaggan in-game telling me, like, oh, we used to live somewhere else, but then we were pushed here by the Krayt invasion. And I think that was because of, I don't know if it was because of the deep bubbles or some other dragon that caused them to be pushed, the Krayt to be pushed from where they were to then bother the Quaggan. The Quaggan are now where they are currently. So I guess the ones that are far to the north, the kind of killer whale-looking ones, they were pushed south by Jormag and the Norn and the Kodan. And they also, like I said, they live in the Tarnished Coast. Some live in some lakes. There's actually, I think, a lake in it's the human area. where they're like just swimming around in a lake. I think that's where the Blood Witch is too. But I guess when your house can just be cut and pushed down any waterway, it's easy to move from one place to another. Right, so they're government. So they used to have, back in the day, before they moved to like Tyria, where they are currently, they were ruled by a leader called Marcasios, I guess? I don't know. But the Crate basically destroyed their entire leadership system by killing all the leaders. So now...
That'll do it.
Yeah. So now they kind of... Each little group of Quaggan has their own mayor. Like, each village that you go to where you see the Quaggan, they have their own mayor, and that mayor rules, like, that specific area of Quaggan. I know that there's a whole racial sympathy aspect of personal story for your characters, and this is basically at some point you make a decision and you basically continue to come in contact with a given race, and it'll affect your personal story, and you'll have more missions and more, things related to that specific race. And we know that one of the Sylvari racial sympathy race choices is the Quaggan. So if you want to learn more about them, you could always choose that when you're playing a Sylvari. If you're playing a Sylvari character, which actually the Sylvari have the Hylek, the Skritt, and the Quaggan, which is interesting because the three of us are planning on playing Sylvari, and that's the topic of this episode. It's totally not planned out, but that's just kind of how it happened.
I guess based off of the stuff that I learned by doing this episode will determine in what I choose.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that maybe... Yeah, that's everything I have for the Quaggan. Like I said, there's not a whole lot on them. But there is a song. I don't know if you guys... I know... It sounds like Kaysee seen it or heard that song.
Yeah.
I have not.
Oh, I will link that to you right now. But I will make sure we post a video to the Quaggan swimming song in the description. So
I couldn't last 40 seconds.
it's rough.
It's
I don't understand.
Oh, you will. Here, I'm gonna post it to you right now. So now, I guess Kaysee will send it. Unless you guys have anything you want to mention about the Quaggan, I'll throw it over to Kaysee.
all right then. So I was doing the Skritt, and before I started this, I really didn't like Skritt very much. They were just annoying, and they stole everything, and they're like rats. I didn't like them. But then in the Beta Weekend 3, you could go to Skritsburg, and I started to like them. They were okay. And then after I did my research, I just kind of fell in love with them. I'm seriously in love with the Skritt now. And they've just gotten such a hard bargain by ArenaNet. But so I'll start with the Skritt and their appearance in case you don't know what they look like. So they're like rats, but they have elongated arms that almost reach down to the ground, and they have big ears and big eyes, and they walk on two legs. And so they're not really cute when you first look at them, but they've grown on me. So when you see one in game, you'll definitely recognize them. And probably the most notable thing about them is they have this thing called a hive mind. And so when they're by themselves, they're really, really stupid. And in some cases, if they're by themselves, they can't even speak. But, when they get together, they become increasingly intelligent. And the reason that this is because they can talk. They actually, when they communicate, they talk really fast, and it's kind of like chirping kind of noises. Chirping and squeaking, and it's so fast that humans can't actually hear them speaking. All they hear is like a buzz. So when they're together, they communicate at such a speed, and they share ideas, and they go over plans and ideas and all that sort of thing. So it actually seems like they're a lot more intelligent, and in a way they are. So if you meet a few, they'll be capable of speaking, but they won't be speaking English very well. But if you meet a lot, like in Skritsburg, you'll actually notice that they're a lot smarter, and they've come up with ideas, and they have complex civilization that you won't be able to see from a Skrit that's by himself, because a Skrit by himself is almost just like a animal. So that's probably the most notable thing, is the hive mind, and that what kind of makes them a bit annoying, because they don't speak English properly, and they're not that not speaking English makes you annoying in my eyes, but
Yeah.
So they basically came from the depths of Tyria, just like the Azura, and that were forced out by Primordus. And the Skrit and the Azura have a really long history together. What you know about the Skrit is really from the Azura standpoint. And I'm not quite sure how reliable that is, because it seemed like the Skrit population was so large that they started fighting over territory and supplies in the depths of Tyria. This is before the dragons rose. And at one point, and this Azura even now view Skrit as pests, and they were exterminating Skrit to a large extent, like mass extermination, saying that it was population control. And it could be population control. It could have just been Azura getting very, competitive. Because you can actually see that when a lot of Skrit come together, they become very smart. But there's a lot of danger, because to become as smart as an Azura, there has to be a lot of them, but at the same time there's a lot of these entities that are as smart as Azura, so together they can do probably a lot more than the Azura could. So it depends on who writes the history, but according to the Azura, the Skrit were overpopulating, so they had to kill a lot of them. And when my Primordus rose, a lot of their population got culled because they got separated and panicked, and so a lot of them died on the way to the surface. And for a long time, the Azura thought that they were extinct, and they were quite happy about this, but then they realized that they were actually popping up all over Tyria again. So you can actually see, all throughout the lands, they're popping up in small settlements. Their behavior and culture is... This is what made them lovable to me, is that they're really like children. They're not malicious or aggressive by nature. They won't attack you on sight. They might attack you if, there's not very many of them and they're dumb and they think that you're going to steal their food. But if you're not a threat to them, they won't hurt you. And they're very trustworthy as well, as long as they stay in a group large enough, and so they're smart enough to remember the promises they made. And while they do steal, they don't always steal. They prefer to mooch what they want off you, like by going, oh, I noticed that you have that sword, but you have 2 swords. You don't need that sword. You're going a long way, Let me take that off your hands for you. That's just going to be a burden. And then they run off with it. So that's how they like to steal their shinies. The thing that makes them childish in my mind is they rarely ever plan ahead. They don't, when they're attacking someone, they don't make complex plans and it's difficult for them to make new inventions. And also, like agriculture, they can't sustain agriculture because, if I quote the blog, they're a bit too lazy and self-absorbed to sustain agriculture. And they prefer to learn things, because they're not smart enough, they prefer to learn things off other races. So you actually see in Skritsburg, there's a lot of Azura items spread around the place because they steal it and then they like to learn from it. And there's actually an event where you defend the Skrit while they steal golem parts from the inquest, and they bring it back to Skritsburg and they put it together, try and learn from it, and then all of a sudden the golem's gone rampaging and you have to help them kill the golem. So they get themselves into a lot of trouble. They're omnivores and they prefer to eat cooked meat and fungi. Like that's from when they're in the depths of Tyria, they like to eat the fungi in the caves.
Mm-hmm.
As for religion, I have a quote here from Rhys Osby, and it says, "The Skritt have only a faint sense of faith, more a sense of empathy for the world and a belief in the divine source or power. Skritt feel that life exists simply so that one can have pleasant times and good memories. They are hedonists, which the definition of hedonist is a person who believes that the pursuit of pleasure is the most important aspect of life. They're hedonists and willing to gain their comforts from someone else's labor." And this is me. This is seriously me. I think that, life should just be enjoyed and, you should just spend your life making happy memories. So I really identified with that. This is probably the most interesting thing though, because it's not explored at all, but it's so evident in the game, is relationships. So when they grow, the population grows, they become such a complex civilization to the point where they could easily rival humans or Char. And so this annoys me because they're actually sentient human beings, just as much as the Silvari, the Char, the humans, the Azura, the Norn, and yet the Azura go on mass extermination sprees to limit their number. But so basically they have Skritt families, and the kids are called, so they have a mother and father who mate, and then they have kids, which are called Kit. And the parents are known to love and pamper their children a lot, so they're quite adoring parents. And their Skritt relationships also seem to loosely follow human relationship conventions, such as remaining loyal to your partner. And the way I found this out was in game. There's a Skritt who goes, you're attacking him, and he goes, "I swear I didn't know she had a family. I'll make up for it." So obviously he was with a Skritt who had a family, and so he thinks that you're attacking him because of something he's done in the past. And they also have love. They fall in love and make romantic connections, but on top of that, they also feel like the same sort of feelings we do for love. Like one Skritt expresses joy when you release him for being able to see his love, being able to go back and see his love, and another one, he kind of asks for how to attract a mate advice, and he goes, "I like the way her nose twitches, those ears like her more than power bobbles. Does she feel the same way? I don't know. Have it any advice?" And I thought that was quite interesting. But the relationships with other species is less than good. It seems they're being universally picked on. So the Azura have this, quote, rabid hate for the Skritt. And when they're not massacring the Skritt population, they're known to experiment on them. And I'm sure we've all seen the heart, what's it called, that renowned heart, where you test the Azura's IQs. Mm-hmm. And today I actually found that is followed by a mini event in which they go and collect more specimens from a nearby cave, and they've actually collected too much, and the Skritt have gotten too smart, and that's another problem that you have to deal with. But the sort of thing makes me angry because they capture this Skritt and they perform experiments on them, and then when they rebel and try and kill the Azura, we have to go save the Azura. That annoyed me.
This is
so, yeah. So, what I mostly looked at was in the Brisbane Wilds, where the Skritt were being attacked by bandits, by the Inquest, and by the Nightmare Court. So they've got a pretty tough time. Not many people like them. And the Char, it seems like the Char don't really like them very much either. And the only race that seems to have the most sympathy for them is the Silvari. And you can actually do a racial sympathy choice for the Skritt in their storyline, in the Silvari storyline. And as for government, it's basically the Skritt who's the fastest, and the fastest at smartest and the fastest at passing information basically becomes the leader of the group. And it's his job to guide the group and make the important decisions. And you can see that in Skritsburg, they have a Skritt king who, it's really interesting, but this king basically expresses a desire for the Skritt to become more than scavengers. And he says, this is a quote from him, "Skritt aren't much alone. 1, 2, they scavenge. A dozen we can think, build, grow. A city of Skritt could create new designs, not steal from others. We seek something larger, civilization." So it really feels like there's a real sentient being behind them. They're not just animals. And they also have something called a Grey Council, but it seems that they're only summoned in crisis situations, and there's not very much known about them. And then other than that, there's not very much else I have to say. I really advise people to go to Skritsburg if they want to experience Skritt culture in that way, because you'll see a lot of dynamic events there. And, what I really like about the Skritt is that the Skritt actually the king often gets killed by the people that are attacking them in the Brisbane Wilds. And yet every time the king gets killed, as soon as the area's saved again and they've got a new king, they actually welcome outsiders. And, the king actually says, "Do not be afraid. We are generous. We are wise. We are ready to speak with outsiders." So, even though this is such a horrible thing going on, they're still willing to converse with other races. So that's pretty much all I've got on the Skritt. I just want to say that I've made a PDF, and I would hope that it's ready for some people to download afterwards. And I've put a lot more information into the PDF and lovely pictures and diagrams because I really like the Skritt a lot. So I really want people to get into the Skritt, because if it's popular, I think, or maybe ArenaNet will see that it's popular and maybe continue their story a little.
Awesome.
So, that's all I have to say.
That was phenomenal.
Hopefully it wasn't too much.
Compared to what we all had. Wow. Lag, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I didn't realize my mic was on mute, so I was talking for a little while and nothing's happening.
Oh. I thought you had left.
No, I'm still here. That was, oops. But yeah, no, I really do like the Skritt a lot. I hope we see more about them, and I feel like they just, as far as a minor race goes, they do have a lot about them. I've gone to a few Quaggan villages, and they don't have anything even close to, the charisma and story behind what's in Skritsburg.
Yeah, unfortunately, too many people look at the Skritt like I did at first, and they're just like, "Oh, they're stupid, they're rats, they scavenge, they only steal." But there's such a story of, kind of a sad story, that I think that they used to be quite a race underground, and they have a relationship and they want to build new things, but this past time has gone, their time has passed, and basically they're all scattered. And there's nothing for them anymore. And I remember reading something, I can't remember where I read it, but one of the guys who designed the Skritt, he had a story about this group of Skritt who went to stay with the Quaggan. And this Skritt fell in love with the Quaggan culture, and he just admired them and loved them. But then his group decided to leave, and he stayed behind. And the Skritt was basically left behind, and he wasn't smart anymore, and he just remembered that he loved the Quaggan, but he couldn't remember why. And so that's another sad element to them, is that they're not really anything by themselves. But when they're together, they can be absolutely powerful and magical. But he said that didn't get into the game, but he hoped it would get into the game at some point.
Yeah, hopefully. So, yeah, well, thank you again for showing us up and being awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I just hope everyone starts to like the Skritt, because I really hope that, they'll stop being the underdog at one point.
Yes. I mean, after that, my opinion on them has completely changed. I mean, you're right. At first, I just kind of viewed them as really annoying rats.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
then you started talking about like the Asuran testing them, and I was like, oh, I'm all sad.
You actually noticed that, like, you know that heart place I was talking about? And they're, like, slaving them and making them slaves and testing on them. But then you notice that there's one Skritt to the side with armor on and he's got a name. And I was thinking, ooh, I'll go and talk to this guy. And basically he's just being put there to say, oh no, the Azura aren't hurting us. They're not that bad. Do you have a treat for me? That kind of, it was just kind of like, I think the people at ArenaNet realized that it was quite awful what, you know, the underlying, they're funny, but there's an underlying kind of awful nature to what the Azura are doing. And so they were just like, oh, we'll just put a guy here who makes it, you know, can explain that it's not really that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We didn't get any questions or answers or any questions to answer this week, so skip out on that. And then, I don't know, is there anything, you know, speculations of anything about any of these races that you guys would like to talk about?
I can't really think of anything speculation-wise. I can say and go ahead and answer my question that I posed earlier. After hearing all three races, which racial sympathy choice would I pick?
Mm-hmm.
And I think my choice is going to be the Hylek.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Just because I think, just personally, I think it'll just make more sense with the way I'm wanting to play my character in my head. And it's, you know, the Hylek are very tribal, and that's how I'm wanting my character to be.
Right.
So that's really based off of all that's going on. But if it wasn't for that, I would pick the Skritt, just based off of my opinion on the race now.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I was thinking Hylek too, just because I really like the Hylek.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it would just be kind of funny to pick Quaggan.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't know if that'll like be a big disadvantage.
Yeah.
Like if I gotta get into a fight, I'd rather have a team, like a whole Zerg of Skritt or a handful of Hylek rather than like a couple of Quaggan that were like, we don't want to fight. Quaggan, no.
Fight.
Exactly. Yeah.
And on top of that, you'd have to listen to their voices, like, Quaggan don't want to do this. I think that would be like, because listening to that YouTube video for so long, I just can't stand their voices anymore.
Swimming, swimming, swimming.
Oh, no, stop it.
No. Yeah, exactly. If you choose Quaggan, you're going to have to listen to that.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's true, too. So, oh well. How about you,
I'm
Kaysee?
definitely choosing the Skritt 100%. And, like, after doing this, I'm thinking of maybe incorporating Skritt into a story for Azalea.
Oh,
You know, the problem with Skritt is that, you know, if you really want to explore them, you're going to have to go to a place where there's, like, hundreds of them. And, you know, because I was thinking at first it'd be nice to have, like, one adventuring with them, but if you get one by itself, it's just going to be like an animal. It's going to be someone's pet.
Yeah.
Too dumb by themselves, but...
Mm-hmm.
No, definitely Skritt.
All right. Well, I think this is a record here for podcast timing.
I think we are actually under an hour.
Well, this makes up for 2 hours and 40 minutes last time.
Yeah.
So, I guess What's that?
We're just going to every end of the spectrum.
Yeah, exactly.
Really long, really short.
Uh-huh. So, I guess we'll just throw it out there that if you guys want to send us any questions, any comments, feedback, questions for Kaysee or any of the other guests that we ever have on here, you can send those questions to hosts@chroniclesoteria.com or hit up one of pretty much every social media except for MySpace. We're on. So Tumblr, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, yada, yada, yada. The list goes on. So you can send us your questions there. You can check out our forums. Send us questions there. I think the thank you episode will definitely be next week. There's thinking tomorrow, and now there's a stress test, so not going to happen. So, we'll have the thank you episode next week at some point. We'll bring in, hopefully Naveen will be back. And like I said, I am planning on, I mentioned it last time, but it may get cut out due to the editing process. But I am going to release a limited schedule for what I'm going to be doing when the Head Start starts. I don't want to put down every single thing for everybody to know, like, oh, from 1 a.m. to 2 p.m. or 1 a.m. to 2 a.m., he's going to be crafting in Lion's Arch. Because, like, I don't really want to get bothered if I'm going to be crafting. So, but any of the stuff that I'll be more public, like, let's say the first 2 hours or 3 hours, maybe even 4 hours, I'm playing World versus World, capturing neutral points and that kind of a thing. And my plan is to do that mostly because a lot of people are going to be playing PvE. And this will be a good time for me to us to get in there and kind of take the keeps. And then, let's see. And like I said, then I'll probably, or if I'll post things where it's like, from this time to this time, I'm going to make a plan to get 100% explored and clear out everything of the Caledon Forest. So, why don't you come find me and we can work, get some people together and we can go take care of that.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, keep an eye out for that in the next couple of weeks because we are at 16 days till Head Start.
Oh my god.
I know.
I'm literally dying over here with anticipation.
So, yeah, actually, I'll just ask you guys this quick before we close up. Do you think releasing these stress tests so often, I mean, obviously I know we're going to get the full game at some point, but do you feel like releasing these stress tests one right after another like this kind of almost takes something away from the hype and, like, how much you want to play the game? Because it's like, I found that myself today, like, there was no glaringly new content that I could find. Most of the changes that I could tell already were implemented last stress test. Mm-hmm. And, like, I was playing for a little while, and I can't continue my personal story because there is no more in the beta. Mm-hmm. And, like, I could go to, World vs. World or PvP, and that's fine. But, like, I just felt like I didn't want to go run around and quest because it's all going to get deleted. So I was just like, yeah, I don't know. I'll play for a little bit and I disappear for an hour and a half and I'll come back and play for a little bit. But like
oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say what were you gonna say?
You were gonna say what I was gonna say?
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. For me, it's I am holding off and not trying to do too much of storyline just because I know it's all going to be deleted. Mm-hmm. But for me, I created a new character today just because I don't like to play with alts. I like to have a main, and so during stress tests and betas, as the more stress tests they can give me, the better, because that gives me more opportunity to figure out what I want to play as. Right. Come Head Start, where nothing's going to get deleted. That way, I don't have to make all this progress and then change my mind because I don't like something. Yeah. So I like that personally. But when it comes to storyline, I know because now, excuse me, and I've now tried all 3 options for the Sylvari storyline with the White Stag, the Shield, and that Green Warrior. Mm-hmm. So I know what I'm going to do with that. I didn't dabble too much into either of them to really have that much of a spoiler.
Right.
But so I stopped doing that with this new character that I made today, and I just enjoyed playing. I didn't enjoy continuing my storyline, but I enjoyed playing. Like I said, I'm not a big PvP fan, mm-hmm. but today was like the most fun I've had in World versus World.
Yeah.
So I mean, if just they're going to give me constant stress tests, then I'm going to do that, and I will be perfectly fine, and then I will still be hyped for release because then my character is going to stay constant. I can actually start like putting trait points and stuff like that into my trait tree because I know then it's going to count for something. I could actually start hoarding materials. I could start doing crafting. I could start really exploring, trying to get all the nitty gritty type stuff, trying to get every little explorable point in Caledon Forest, because then I know that title's actually going to count for something in the end, instead of just being wiped.
Right.
So, and plus, I'm also hyped just for just the fact that I would be able to play for hours and hours and hours on end. No one can tell me to stop. So
Yeah, that's also true. So.
Yeah, I think I don't think I lose any hype because a lot of the time, especially the last few stress tests and beta weekends, I've been actually going around looking for lore.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I can do that, doesn't really matter how much effort I put into it, because even if it gets wiped, I'm still going to remember that lore. And one of this stress test, the hour that I had, I was looking at Skritt, and before that I was looking at Nightmare Court, and I also find that, my husband also asked me today, he's like, I don't want to play because, everything's going to be wiped anyway. I'll play when it gets released. But I'm like, it's the combat that's fun for me. It's running around and doing stuff that I find fun. So even though I will get wiped, I'm still enjoying that process.
Right. Yeah, no, I do like it. I just felt like I didn't feel like, oh god, I gotta log in all 4 hours. Because I had one last week, and especially if I had known that there was gonna be one tomorrow, it's like, oh, well, I'll just play tomorrow. But now, part of me is also like, you should have played harder because you have more time with that same character, so you can try to level up more. But
Right.
no. So,
I think that's about it.
yeah, I think so. I think we're just going to start rambling if we try to talk about anything else. So, unless you guys have anything specific you want to mention, we'll wrap up this episode.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, and we'll stick with the same kind of ending we had last time, so there's no confusion. All right. So again, thank you to Kaysee for coming out. That's great. We appreciate it. We miss having Naveen, but if we ever need to fill in for any one of us, you're going to be our go-to.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now I feel like I need to step up my note-taking process, but
Oh, absolutely.
but yeah, for Chronicles of Tyria podcast, episode number 14, I am Lagwyn.
Damn it, I'm Diint. I was doing so well.
And I'm Kaysee.
And we'll see you next time.